Welcome to the Change Within podcast. My name is Gerard Uselli, and we are on the final episode of the Essential series. This has been a 10-episode journey to ensure that people who have really put themselves out there to have change embedded in their lives and for so many people around them to have such a sense of sentiment to make sure that they're all working together, to make sure that people are achieving the new heights in their own society and how they do things for themselves, and also just to see how it goes all throughout our community. And in this case, this is no exception to the rule. Let me introduce to you Story Kuszel. Story, how are you today?
I'm good. So my name is Story Kuszel, as you just mentioned. I'm a real estate agent licensed in New York. I work with Coldwell Banker, and my franchise is actually licensed in all 50 states. So we've been seeing a lot of change throughout the pandemic. And I want to thank you for having me on the last episode of The Change Within. I think it's going to be very informative. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So something I wanted to know with you was, did you always know that you wanted to be in real estate?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody really knows what they're looking for until they find it. With that being said, no, I didn't always know I wanted to be in real estate. Nobody in my family really owns real estate. I knew remotely nothing about real estate. And I was actually going to college in Manhattan for biology. Found out that was not what I was passionate about. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'll take a gap year and figure it out. And then I knew somebody who owned a real estate company, and they approached me and said, why don't you just try it? And I'm like, I don't know anything about real estate. Who's going to buy a house from me? And after studying a lot, I decided to take the test, and I passed on the first try. And here we are 3 years later.
I'll say this much. I feel like for those who least expect that they're going to get into something, I feel like that's the most where someone is likely to prove themselves amid the circumstances that are provided to them. I feel like in the sense of like trying to get from one place to another, even if it's not in the main road you're anticipating, you kind of have the best case of results in a lot of ways because it's something that you want to make a mark on.
Yeah, well, I definitely spent a lot of time and devoted myself to really learning it because, like I said, I didn't really have a background in it whatsoever. I went from a biology student to real estate tycoon. So for me, it was a lot of footwork to get where I am today. So
Definitely on that. And I wanted to ask, like, how did the idea of selling homes inspire you to start your footing?
So this is a really good question. Um, Ironically enough, I don't really think that the idea of selling a home has inspired me as much as creating relationships, because at the end of the day, um, I think I'm in a people business. I'm not really in a real estate business. Like I said, I'm in a people business. I like to get to know people, and I like people to get to know me, and I build relationships with all my clients. So I think that part is what was most meaningful for me and has inspired me to take my career to the next level.
Absolutely. And something I can attest to as far as relating to the lifestyle of being in such a sales oriented position, someone who used to have a fundraising background, always getting a no was one of those things that led me to a new opportunity, knowing that the no was out of the way. I wanted to ask, in your perspective for you, is what does no mean to you?
Okay, also a good question. I love being told no. And I think that this goes back to what I had just spoke about, like I'm in a people business. Sales is essentially relating to people. And I think this is where like the tactical empathy comes into play. I think no is a guarded term. And my job is to get people to let their guard down. So with that being said, I'm just getting to know people more. And I think every no is a little bit closer to a yes.
That's an interesting way to put it because I've noticed this throughout kind of like the way of relating it to you is the way I've always phrased no is that you could put the no in now, but you can never put no in never. if you think about the word association. So like you could say no to me now, but you never know what could happen in that
It
case.
could change. Yeah. And I mean, like, no is a great conversation starter. Like, it has never been the case where somebody's like, I'm like, oh, do you want to sell a house? They go, no. I say,
Right.
okay, why? Like, tell me more. I want to know you. You know, I'm not, when I see somebody, I don't just think like, oh, I want to sell them a house or I want to sell their largest asset. You know, it takes steps to get there. And so, in order for us to get there, I need to have them let their guard down. And, you know, I want to work with people who want to work with me. So, like, the more somebody opens up to me, you know, the easier the relationship is going to flow. And then eventually, if it's not now, maybe it'll be like 10 years from now that we'll get to work together.
Also, a follow up in this case, now that you've talked about what no means to you, do you think yes is a way that kind of keeps your guard up? Like, what do you think about that? Do you think when people say yes more, do you feel like they kind of have a guard as far as, okay, I'll say yes to this, yes to that, but how am I really opening up to that person too?
Do you mean like if I'm the one saying yes, or the person who is like looking to sell maybe or looking to buy a home is the one just like yesing me?
Exactly, the second one.
Okay. Um, I don't think necessarily. I think that sometimes that makes me a little bit nervous, like when people don't have many questions, because I'm like, okay, like this is too good to be true. But no, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think I don't think that yes is necessarily like somebody having their guard up,
That's
you know,
fair.
especially in dealing with someone's largest asset like a home. You know, they have so much money and equity in it most cases, so I get like a little bit nervous when people are like yes, 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 yes. I'm like, how do you not have any questions? How are you not nervous about this?
It's almost like you want to ask the questions for them in a lot of ways.
Yes.
It's like you're playing devil's advocate with yourself, just on the other side of the mirror.
Pretty much.
Well, also something in the regard of just being in the industry itself and undergoing so much change throughout the pandemic is, what was the biggest change in your job throughout its time? What do you feel like you've had to adapt to the most?
Mhm. So I think a lot of people had to go through many changes within the last, I can't believe it's been 2 years already since like this whole thing has gone down. But I think everybody has undergone a lot of changes. And I want to point out two things in particular that affected the real estate industry. One is the volatility of the market. It is so volatile right now. And basically, what happened was when I first started in real estate, I was seeing like interest rates somewhere around like 3.5 to 4%. Um, when COVID happened and we got locked down, right, I wasn't allowed to show houses for the months of March through June of 2020.
Yes.
So to keep demand up, the rates had dropped to like, I think the lowest I seen was like 2.4. And again, like this all depends on someone's
Wow.
credit and the bank they're using. But in my case, one of my clients got a rate that low. So a lot of people were like buying. They wanted to get this essential free money, like, and we had so many buyers on the same listings that it ended up creating bidding wars on almost everything and driving the prices up. So if you were to ask me, it probably had a positive impact on my industry. The real estate market was driving the economy, in my opinion. And then the second thing I wanted to point out, I just touched upon it previously, was we weren't allowed to show for 3 months. So there were so many restrictions that realtors had to face. And like the rules were so strange. Like we weren't allowed to coordinate a showing, but we were allowed to put the buyer and the seller in contact with each other. In a normal market, the buyer and seller are not supposed to be talking to each
Of
other.
course.
So essentially, we were being cut out of the picture. So it was a lot of like paperwork, making sure like your agency disclosures were signed and stuff like that. So what I would do is I would put the seller and buyer in contact with each other. And I would go in my car with the mask on and sit outside and wait until the showing was over. But I wasn't allowed to physically be in the house.
It's kind of like doing journalism without being at the event in its own right.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird. And then another option was a virtual tour. So I would be allowed to go into the house with a mask and gloves and shoe coverings on and take like a video of the house and send it to my buyer. Or if I were the listing agent, provide a video online and then just hope that somebody was going to buy the house based on the video.
Do you honestly feel like if you were on the other side, just as someone buying a house, do you feel like the convincing of doing a virtual tour would kind of like appeal to you, or you just be like, no, I got to see this in person?
No, I would definitely have to see it in person. I feel like videos can be so misleading and like there's nothing like being in the house itself. And I mean, one good thing that came out of it was I think my technology definitely advanced. As far as like photography and stuff like that, we were doing Matterports, which were basically like a 360 walkthrough of the house. So like if you don't know what a Matterport is, like if have you ever been on Google Maps and like you can do
Oh,
the
of course.
satellite
I know
view
exactly what
and
you're
you
talking
can
about.
tap and walk down the street?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
basically what we would do of a house. And I think that we did get surprisingly good feedback from it. I think that, I mean, obviously a lot of people were buying homes, but they would be allowed to go into the home at the time of the home inspection. So after they did the tour, if they liked it and they put in an offer and they had a home inspection, they would be allowed to go into the house.
Absolutely. And my question to you is, this is a fun one that's a little bit off the spot on this case. What would your dream house look like?
Oh my gosh, I've seen so many houses with so many different styles. Probably like a massive center hall colonial. I like
Hmm.
the spiral staircases, um, marble floors, definitely light, bright, neutral colors.
Don't you? It's like marble floors for some reason. It just defines a house that much more, comparatively speaking. I just feel like when you really want to sell something to somebody and you have the marble floors there, you have people automatically amazed, and they don't even have the thought of like a home inspection yet.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if you emphasize, you know, the luxurious side or like the if you add value to what is already there, people tend to like it more. They're like, "Oh, this is fancy. I like it. I want it."
Definitely. And to kind of reverse it a little bit in everything, what's the feeling like to see people close on a home?
It's definitely a good feeling. I don't think anybody would be upset seeing someone
Of
close on
course.
a home. It's definitely a great feeling. And, you know, for me, it's like, wow, these people entrusted in me with purchasing or selling their largest asset. Like some people, like a home is all they have. And like to be a part of that transaction, you know, people have family memories in there. You know, every story is different. You know, we've dealt with like estate sales where maybe somebody passed away and it's a more emotional transaction, or maybe it's somebody's first time buying a house and starting a family, and just knowing that I could be associated with those memories and being entrusted in handling that asset is like the best feeling ever.
Absolutely. And to kind of just close off the whole sense of conversation with the essentiality of real estate is something I like to ask uniformly per guest that I've had on this series. And I've gotten all types of answers, some that are more contentious, some that feel like it sustains itself. How can we make real estate more essential than it already is?
How can we make real estate more essential than it already is? Well, this is something that I asked myself when we were shut down from the months of March to June. And I was getting irritated because the liquor store down the block from me was able to sell liquor, but I wasn't able to go and show a house and sell a house. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, people always are going to need a place to live. How are we not essential?
Right.
And I think one observation that I've made in the past few months is, it's no secret, like inflation is definitely on the rise. Prices of gas are going up, prices of lumber is going up. So to get somebody into a home, right? Oh, rent is going up every year, right? The cost of living in New York City always goes up.
Yeah.
Get somebody into a home that's already built, ready, at a fixed rate for the next 30 years, assuming they're taking a mortgage, is probably very essential, in my opinion. That's just how I look at it. And to make it more essential, I think we need to bring more light to that. Yeah.
Definitely. And I'll say this much as far as real estate and just in the sense of doing it all, for people to find their home and build a foundation for themselves, for you to be part of their journeys in doing so is a testament to how you fulfill the community throughout the times. In this case, as a conclusion, this is the final essential episode for the Change of Fin podcast. So for those who want to check us out on the Change of Fin, you can do so by going to Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Story, thank you very much for joining me today and have a great rest of your day.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.